Darn technology, huh? Historian is an assigned position. That's going to be you. Okay. Elected or not, I think we have about everybody on the board there. That's all right. All right. Any other nominations? Okay, nominations will remain open until we vote in December. Right? Okay. Rick, did you want to say something about what books we have tonight? Anything there? Books? Yeah, do you have anything to share about the books specifically that we have? Okay. Okay. All right, well, at this point then, I think it's time to turn the time over to K7HSR, and he is going to teach us all about putting up a tower. Scary stuff.
Thank you, Marv. I think James has me wired, so I will take a seat here if you don't mind and get my notes out. First off, thank you for having me tonight. Thank you for inviting me to make this presentation. I had a bit of a time. Actually, I want to tell you a story. But before I tell you a story, I'm going to ask for a show of hands. How many of you have seen ads for a free tower and said, "Ooh, what a good idea"? I'd like to get one of those, right? Okay, a bunch of us. Well, I had one of those experiences, and I actually found a guy offering a free antenna tower here in the valley, and this was a couple of years ago, and I won't give you all the gory details, but let's just say it didn't work out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So why would any of us want to have a ham radio antenna tower? Any ideas?
Irritate the neighbors.
Irritate the neighbors, that would work. Any other practical reasons as to why we might want to have a tower?
To fight with the city.
I'm sorry?
To fight with the city.
To fight with the city. That's always an opportunity. Bruce?
Increase possibilities of DX.
Okay. Increase your being able to hear and be heard. And that's exactly right. That's the reason and the best reason to have an antenna. All of those other things come with. And I'll talk about some of those things. But elevation, especially on the HF bands, will get you heard and allow you to hear better the higher you go. Now, unfortunately, this topic requires some background. And for those of you who were not ham radio operators,
Your PowerPoint's not up, I don't know.
oh dear.
Well, when you're ready, just tell me.
Oh, all right. You're going to move it?
You are.
I'm going to move it. Okay.
I just control what goes out to YouTube.
All right. I'm ready. I just hit a... So not all of us were ham radio operators back in the 80s, but back in that time frame, the ARRL petitioned the FCC in the hopes of getting a policy that would prevent communities from basically banning ham radio antennas and towers. And guess what? They won. They got the FCC to pass this policy known as PRB1, and it allows and requires communities to give reasonable accommodation to amateur radio facilities. Now, the cities still can regulate for safety. So they can impose building code restrictions, they can impose setbacks, they can require us to have engineering drawings and other stuff. But generally speaking, they have to accommodate us. Footnote, this does not include HOAs or private property associations. And some of you, most of you, should have heard about the ARRL letter writing campaign to try to remove the obstacle of HOAs. If you haven't yet sent your letters, please go to the ARRL website. Click on it, it'll be up at the top of the website, and send letters. It's easy, it'll take you 2 minutes. So, you want to put up an antenna, way up. Where do you start? Well, it so happens that a friend of ours, Noji, wrote a brief article in the UARC newsletter in February 2025, and it's available on their website, as our old newsletters are. And unfortunately, it came out after my project was done, so it didn't help me any. And to be fair to Noji, one page really only allows you to hit a couple of key points. It doesn't really allow you to get into the weeds. But if you have a thought of an antenna tower, it's a good place to start. And frankly, some of the things he brings up might dissuade you. But if you're not deterred and you still want to put up a tower, then I suggest this book. Rather than one page, it's over 200 pages. And I read this book through and through at least twice, and still went back for reference certain sections. But it's a very, very good guiding document. And with that background, I'm going to take you through my journey of putting up a tower at my QTH. Now, it's one thing to dream about a tower. There's probably not a ham who doesn't at one time or another. But putting one up, a whole different story. I happen to be married, so one of my first hurdles was to get permission from my wife. But even before I did that, I had to find out if there were any other hurdles that I had to clear before even tackling the boss. And I decided to check into the rules and regs in my city and say, okay, is this even possible? Is this allowed? And I happen to live in Salt Lake City. And I looked online to the zoning regulations, and my reading seemed to look like it would work. But I didn't want to rely on my own reading, so I went down to town hall, and I actually met with the building department, and they confirmed, yes, I could put up a ham radio tower on my residential property. They said that it would need a building permit and an electrical permit, and oh, by the way, the building permit would require a set of engineering plans for the tower sealed by a licensed Utah engineer. But okay, at least I knew what I needed. Now, I'm looking at a couple of you, and I know many other hams who are not in the room, and some of you may be thinking, no way would I even talk to the city, never mind go and meet with the building department. And I get that. I understand that approach. I do things a bit differently, and I want to explain my reasons. I get a permit for everything. And it has nothing to do with wanting to pay more money to the city. The reason I get a permit for everything I do at my house has everything to do with my homeowner's insurance. I don't want to give my insurance company a reason to say no to a claim, or for that matter, to cancel my homeowner's insurance. It's too important to me. So yeah, I go through the rigmarole, I go through the application process, and I did. Now, I've recently come across a story that I need to share with you because not everybody has the same experience that I did with the building department. I know a story of a ham down in Utah County who committed a substantial amount of his personal funds to put up a tower. And like me, he went to the town, he got a permit, the city actually came out and did a pre-construction inspection. And the inspector said he needed to move the tower location away from his house. Turned out not to be correct, but the ham followed the instructions of the city. To make a long story short, he put up the tower, put up his antenna, and lo and behold, the antenna hung over the sidewalk and the park strip, that is, the public right-of-way. And the city said, oh, you can't have your antenna over the right-of-way. So here he sunk a sizable investment into this tower project, and the city told him he couldn't use it. So, not every building department is perfect, and unfortunately, they're not responsible for their mistakes. But the lesson here is, know the regulations better than the building department. So if they say to you, you need to do X, Y, or Z, you know what it is the regulations say, and you can have a discussion and see if you can't work it out before you end up in the situation that this guy did. By the way, the other thing is, if you live in a neighborhood, talk to your neighbors. Tell them what you have in mind. Don't just let it show up one day. And if you can, get their support. Be a good neighbor. It pays back in dividends. It really does. Okay. So then I went to work on my wife. The city said I could do it. I said, okay, now it's time for me to get permission from the boss. And just because they say you can do whatever you want doesn't mean you should. But she said yes. Of course, like a good wife, she asked me how much it would cost. And by this time, I had been doing some research. I had been looking for used towers, and I had found a used crank-up tower in California, and I guessed the project might come in around $6,000. So that's what I told her. I really thought that was true. Boy, was I wrong. But I had permission, so I bought the tower. I found a trucking company that would ship it up on a flatbed from California, and fortunately, I have a friend named Adam who has a winch on the front of his truck, and he came over the house, and we winched this thing off of the trailer and put it in the driveway for the winter. So the cost of the tower, new steel cables. I figured why go with old steel cables? I had the guy recable it before he shipped it. And shipment from Los Angeles came in at $5,500. Needless to say, I wasn't going to hit that $6,000 price point. So along the way, I contacted the tower manufacturer, And I learned that I could buy a set of engineering plans from them with a Utah engineer stamp for $350. That's a steal. Bought them. And in those plans, it included specifications for the all-important foundation needed for this tower. And when I was younger, I might have been willing to dig a hole 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet by 6.5 feet deep. Not anymore. So I went about looking for contractors who would dig the hole, build the rebar cage, which you see up there, pour the concrete, all according to the tower plans that I had received. Surprisingly, this was the most expensive line item in the budget. I had quotes that went as high as $12,000 just to make the foundation. Now, I didn't pay that. I found somebody who would do it for half that. And they were done in 2 days. And in the middle there, that's the final product. I was pretty happy with it. So now it was time to figure out how to get this tower onto that foundation. And the distance was only about 150 feet as the crow flies. But it was down the driveway, up the street, then there's a curb, then there's a sidewalk, then there's about 30 feet deep of scrub oak, and another 40 feet to the foundation. Fortunately, I have a friend that used to own a sign company, and his grandson still drives the boom truck. And I called him up and had him come up to the house. Now, I've not done this before, so I was a little naive. There were some things I just wasn't expecting. Frankly, I was expecting this to be the easy part. But, as you can see on the picture on the right, this is the boom truck looking over the scrub oak. And on the left, you can see he's starting to pick up the tower, and he needs to raise that tower up and over the scrub oak. So they need to clear 20 foot of trees, go 75 foot back from where the truck is parked. And guess what? The truck isn't rated to pick 700 pounds up at that angle, at that distance. So it took a bit of doing. We finally got it onto the foundation, and he pulled it up and we got it vertical. And I didn't call anybody to help because, again, I thought this was going to be the easy part. The truck driver, myself, and even my wife came out to help us get this thing lined up so that we could get it up onto the foundation. Now, along the way, and I'm skipping a lot of stuff here, but along the way, I learned a lot about grounding. And this is what not to do. Okay? PVC is not a good grounding material. This, however, the picture on the left is what I ended up with for my grounding system. There was 3 ground rods, one for each leg of the tower, connected to each leg. Each of those ground rods is connected by copper wire, and then that copper wire winds around and connects directly to my house ground and my main electrical panel on the outside of the house. Now, this is another instance where knowing something a little more than the building inspector helped. When the guy came to inspect, he had never seen that picture on the right. He had never seen a thermite-fused copper wire to a copper ground rod. And frankly, neither had I until I set them off. But this is the product in the lower center there. It's made by Harger. There's another brand called Cadweld. They do the same thing. Basically, they fuse the copper wires right to the top of the ground rod. And it's kind of cool when the thermite goes off. Now, one of the most fun parts about this project was that I got to research and decide what to use for an antenna. And I spent a lot of time. Jerry will tell you, I sometimes let my research get in the way of getting stuff done, but I had a winter to do this, and I finally selected what's called a spider beam. This is a multi-band wire antenna, 5 bands, made in Germany, sold through a distributor here in the US. And that picture on the left is all of the parts that came out of the box. And when it finally came time to assemble it, you can see on the right, I assembled it in my driveway. It's hard to see all of the 4 beams there, but I left the car and the garbage can in there for perspective. Those black beams go out 33 feet each way in an X. And of course, you can just barely see the wires that run between those 2 beams. Spider beams, as I said, are made in Germany. Their tech support is spectacular. The guy who runs their tech support actually grew up in the US, and I was on the phone and email with him morning, noon, and night. He was wonderful. He was supportive. He helped me to figure out how to tune the antenna beautifully. They also have a very good website to assist customers in how to assemble these things. And that was my choice of antenna. So the boom truck came back, and this time I had 5 guys to help me. It took all 5 of us to get the darn antenna just out of the driveway because it was so big. And actually took down a couple of tree branches getting it out of the driveway. But this time the boom operator had no problem raising it up. Here's pictures of Adam and James in the street, and Ted watching as the antenna goes up. Now you can, in that picture on the right, actually in both of those pictures, you can see the wires a little better. Most of those are wires, but there's also support structures, support cabling, if you will, non-active wires that hold the booms curved upward. So Adam and James were both up on the tower, helping to guide the antenna mast first into the thrust bearing and then into the rotor, and they secured it. And at this point, I want to share a number of lessons that I learned going through this project. And by the way, I will leave time for questions in case you have any. As you see, I chose a self-supporting crank-up tower. And that was pretty important to me because it meant I didn't need to put in any guy wires. Okay, this thing will go up 55 feet without guy wires. The spider beam antenna itself is super light. The whole thing weighs 25 pounds, less than the mast. The mast probably weighed what, 50 or 60 pounds? At least. So the reason I'm telling you this is because when you put up an antenna way up in the air, you need to be concerned about maximum weight of the antenna. You need to be concerned about wind load and wind area of the antenna. I didn't have to worry about any of those things with this particular antenna. Now, I bought a used rotor, a Ham 4. I sent it back east to have it repaired and, refurbished, completely refurbished. My only concern is now that MFJ is out of business, getting parts in the future is going to be very, very difficult. So hopefully this thing lasts a long, long time. As you can see, and as I mentioned, the spider beam is made up of cross fiberglass beams that go out 33 feet. I had not considered the length of these beams or the sweep of the antenna relative to the trees in my yard. And I don't mean the scrub oak, because scrub oak only goes about 20 feet up. But I have a whole yard full of aspens. And I wasn't counting on having to hire a tree guy to take down some of those aspens to get them out of the way of my antenna. I will tell you, when I finally put the antenna up, it was magical. I love running FT8. I do a lot of digital modes with FT8. And I had countries come up on my computer that I had never seen before. And I have now worked and confirmed 100 DXCC on all 5 bands of the spider beam. 10, 12, 15, 17, and 20. By the way, the last band I confirmed 100 was just this week. Now here's the elephant in the room. Cost. Whatever you think a tower project is going to cost, triple it. That was my experience. Now, some of us are married, and sometimes there's a marriage tax. In my case, it was hardwood replacing carpet in 3 bedrooms upstairs. I have no problem with that. I have a wonderful wife, happy life. But recognize, depending upon your situation, there may be a marriage tax involved in a project this size. Do not underestimate the value and support of other Hams and Elmers. Special thanks to Adam, James, and Ted for their help on this project, without whom, especially Adam and James, I never would have gotten this done. Never would have happened. I learned quite a lot on this journey. How to tune a wire antenna, grounding, and even a little bit about construction. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And somebody will. Thank you. Any questions? Is there a question in the back, Sabra? Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, weren't you supposed to have more rods on the tower? I thought you were supposed to have 3 rods per leg.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand it. Gary, what did you say?
Aren't you supposed to have more rods? I thought you have to have like 3 rods per leg. You said only 1, no.
Oh, the ground rods. There are some people who say that 3 ground rods per leg of tower is better because of the location, and of course you want them to be roughly 120 degrees apart because of the fact that the tower was right up against my house. That really wasn't practical, so I settled for 1 ground rod per tower. That was my justification. Yes, Jerry?
Just as a comment, the important thing that I saw that you showed was the CAD weld or the thermite weld is incredibly important if you're going to have a tower and get hit by lightning. If you have just a clamp on or you try to solder or something like that, those will flash off almost immediately when you get hit by lightning. And Scotland's on the top of the mountain, so this tower is now one of the highest things around up there. So at some point, you'll get hit. The grounding is really strong where you've put it in. And so, you know, more ground, as a lot of people think is better, but there's a lot of myths. And as long as you have solid bonding of the legs to the ground, you'll be good.
Thank you. And by the way, I had never lit off thermite before, and just to go back to that slide, as you can see on the right there, that's actually a crucible that comes as part of the kit, and in the lower here, in this picture, this is actually the top of the crucible that, James, I lost my, sorry. This is actually the top of the crucible that goes over this, and what you end up doing is you end up pouring the thermite through this hole, and then you light it with a, kind of like a sparker, kind of like a barbecue, not a lighter, but a sparker, and it flashes. And it goes off pretty hot in order to actually bond those wires together. Any other questions? Yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, three-parter. What's the elevation of your antenna? What was the elapsed time from when you approached the city until you finished the project, the first transmission? And did the 3X cost include the marriage tax, or was that in addition to the 3X?
The marriage tax was in addition. The elevation at my house is about 5,300 feet. So I'm about 1,000 feet above the city floor. The tower goes up about 55 feet. Right now I think it's at about 40 some. And what was the second question? How long did it take from the time I got the permit? Good question.
How long did it take you to get the permit from the city?
The permit process wasn't bad. It was a matter of and permits in Salt Lake City are all done online. All the reviews are done, and your feedback and your paperwork is issued online. I'll bet you the permit process was 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops. All right, but again, these are allowed by code, so I didn't need any special dispensation. So long as I met all of the requirements, and I did. And again, having met with them in advance, knowing what they wanted, I gave them what they wanted. So, I helped myself that way from a process. I'm guessing from the time I got the permit to the time I got on the air, Jerry, I'm going to say it was less than a year. Okay? But this whole process took over a year from start to finish. And I suppose I could have done it faster. I could have bought a brand new tower. I could have had it shipped in. I could have had a contractor put the whole thing up. I actually have two neighbors in the avenues who have towers, and I met with both of them to talk about their experiences and what they went through, and that's what one guy did. He bought a brand new tower from DX Engineering. He had it shipped in. He had a contractor put it up. They had a whole crew there, and I can assure you it cost him a whole lot more than it cost me. There's a question in the back.
Did you have to get a permit from the city for the truck?
No. Just the only thing the city required was a building permit and an electrical permit. And the building permit was the foundation, and the electrical was the grounding. So it wasn't very very elaborate. Ironically, I had I had power on that side of the house. Oops. Looking for I had power. Try it again. Okay, here we go. I had power on this outside of my house. I did have an electrician come in and put an outlet. If you see all the way down at the bottom of the picture of the tower, which is still about 5 feet up from the base of the foundation. That's actually the motor. And it's covered in cloth to protect it from the elements, but there's an electrical motor that raises and lowers the tower. So all I do is I take the cover off the motor, unwrap the wire, plug it into the outlet, literally 3 feet away on the wall, and then unplug it when I'm done. Any other questions? Yes, sir. He's going to get you the microphone so they can hear you online.
Is it?
You're good.
So for 49 years, I've salivated at the thought of putting up a 200-foot tower, because all these federal documents on the FCC tests and things we were made to memorize have language that says federal law allows towers of up to 200 feet to be the prerogative of the amateur who was using it, blah, 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 for purposes, not running a commercial radio station. Did you run into that at all, and is that still around?
The answer is I don't know. Jerry, do you?
Yeah, I have an answer on that. Yes, you can put up a tower under 200 feet.
So the current answer to the question is you can put a tower up under 200 feet, which means 199.11 point something inches. But there are lighting requirements and also siting requirements related to airports and other things. You would have to guy it, and you have to realize that you have to have enough property that if the tower comes over, it will remain on your property. And so that's one of the things about putting up a tower. Scott's got 55 plus feet to his property line. And so if the tower were to fall, it will fall and remain on his property. So if you're planning to put your tower up, next to your house, and you've got an 8-foot side yard, that's a non-starter. Because if it comes down, it can come down across the property line, and that's a huge problem. Also, if you have power lines, and it can come down anywhere on the power lines, that's a huge problem, and you have huge liability if you do that. And so the only people that have 200-foot towers are people living out in the country on the Great Plains, and they have, something out in the cow patty with, huge guidelines on those. And I have friends in Nebraska that do that, but it's nice to think about how high can you go, but what's practical where you're located is really important.
Yeah, and I happen to live, as Jerry said, power lines are a huge issue. I happen to be very, very fortunate. I have underground utilities in my neighborhood, so that was never a consideration. I didn't mention that. Thank you for reminding me. Not everybody has that situation in their neighborhood, but I'm sure the city would not have approved of my location if the power lines were within reach of my falling tower. Any other questions? Anybody else? James?
Thanks. Yeah, just a comment, really. I wanted to comment as well. I don't necessarily have the space to put up a tower at my house, but I've definitely put up quite a few antennas at my own home QTH on my roof and stuff like that. And yeah, you're right. You need to make sure that if the tower does fall, I believe the FCC rules are that the tower needs to fall at least 10 feet away from power lines and stuff like that. So in my situation, I have a lot of aerial power lines in my backyard. So I had to put up my antennas on the front part of my roof so that way things fall into the front yard. But I'm getting to my point here. The thing that was critical and important for me is the best and absolute place where I put up my first antenna at my house is right above the eave of my front door. So I thought it was great. I put up a 2 meter, 70 centimeter antenna with a huge gain of 11.3 dBi.
Wow.
And I thought about it for a minute. Hey, now that I've got my antenna up, maybe I should go ahead and do a station evaluation. So I went ahead and ran the numbers. My ICOM 705, it'd be totally fine on 10 watts, but what if in the future I wanted to run 100 watts or something like that? Oh, doing a little bit of math, it looks like I might cook the pizza man after somebody being at the door approximately 3 minutes or more of me transmitting constantly at 100 watts. The radiation was too high, so what I ended up doing was I took the antenna and I put it up on another 10-foot pole and raised it up above the eave even higher. And that took care of the problem, and I'd be able to transmit safely on 100 watts. So not necessarily a question, but I just wanted to remind everyone, do your station evaluation for sure. It's pretty critical.
And the ARRL has a very simple calculator. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. On their website to do a station evaluation. So yes, agreed. Use it. Any other questions about this project or towers? My journey? We're good. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, it's time for our drawing. Does everybody have their tickets in the bucket? You don't have to have one in there if you don't want to win a prize. How many do we need? 8. That's almost one for everybody here. One more, Linda. Okay, Mike. Okay, this is the first one. K7 HSR, Scott. He just barely got sat down. And 7 HVF, Linda. Tom, KC7 DKR. Rick, KG7 G0W. K, I can't tell if that's an E or a C. K, E, or C, 7 CNR. CNR? Is it LNR? Bruce, KC7DGN. WA7DDR. Is that a 7? Okay, WA2, sorry. Okay, this one I think it's A. Is it AI7UG or AJ7UG? AI7UG. That's it. Now, don't fight over them. All right, folks, thank you very much. Good night. We'll see you at the Christmas dinner. Be careful going home. One more thing.
One more thing real quick, the YouTube live stream was a little late, so if you want to go ahead and run over the nominations real quick. You might have missed that.
Okay. These are the nominations as they stand right now, and nominations are open until we vote in December at the dinner. For President, Adam, KK7NJJ. Executive Vice President, Jerry, WJ3RI. Vice President, Bruce, KF7OZK. Secretary, James, KK7AVS. Treasurer, Sean, K9SLE. Program Chair, Mike, KI7MTI. Microvolt, Noji, KNOJI. Yes, in our next meeting, we're going to vote on some important changes to the bylaws. So pass the word around to those who weren't here. We need bodies at that meeting. The address. Okay. 650 East, 7200 South, Midvale. I think the website says 665. Yeah, it's a Golden Corral. Okay. That's up in Bruce's neighborhood. Okay, be careful going home, folks. And thank you.